much for checking out my latest true crime video. I'm so appreciative that you're here, and if you enjoy this content, I would so very much appreciate if you would click the subscribe button just down below my video, as this really helps my little channel grow. Currently, about 80% of my viewers are not subscribed, so if you're in that 80% and you enjoy the content I put out there, as I said, I would so very much appreciate if you would subscribe. With that being said, if you'd rather not, I appreciate whatever support you're giving, whether that's through just a view, a like, a comment, a subscribe. I appreciate you being here, so thank you so much. So, as usual, as this is a true crime case, I have to give a trigger warning that there are discussions of murder and true crime, of course. So if you're under the age of 13 or 14, please click on one of my other videos. Also, as I always like to say, I am not an investigator or detective, so I do my best to make sure the information I'm giving you guys is factual and accurate. But if I've missed something that you feel is important, or if some of the details I presented you feel are not correct, please do let me know in the comments and provide your sources as well. Alright, so today's true crime case was requested by Nat Cash 7096. So NATKASH 7096. Thank you so much for this suggestion. Our case is on Sonia Varaschin, or Varaschin. I'm going to call her Varaschin. It's Varachin. Her full name was Sonia Marie Jeanne Varaschin. She was born in 1968 and was 42 years old at the time of her death in 2010. Unfortunately, I was not able to find an exact date of birth for her. This was nowhere to be found online for some reason. Her father, Attilio Varaschin, had emigrated from Italy and married her French-Canadian mother, Michelle. Her parents began their early adult life, early married years in Toronto, Ontario, and her dad worked as a plumber to support their family. She was one of 3 kids. She was the oldest, and she had a younger brother named Viv and a sister named Nadia. Sadly, her brother passed away in a car accident when he was just an infant, though. As a kid, her and her sister enjoyed playing outside in the backyard. Her mother describes their outside oasis as being a paradise surrounded by hedges and greenery. So as kids, they spent a lot of time out there. She was said to have been a happy child who loved to laugh. She took dance lessons and enjoyed learning to ski. Her mother says that she was always moving and always busy. In her early adult life, she showed an interest in fashion and spent a period of time selling wedding dresses in Toronto, Ontario. She would later move to Alberta for a short period of time, but eventually come back to Ontario to pursue her dream of becoming a pediatric nurse. She graduated with honors from Humber College, and soon she was hired by a Toronto Children's Hospital. She would work in the burn unit and cancer ward. Although this work came with its challenges and heartbreak, obviously, Sonia was said to have loved her job and found joy in caring for others. She apparently saved every card and every drawing that was given to her from her patients and her families, and display them proudly at home or at work. She would buy herself a townhouse and seemed to have found home in the neighborhood that she was living. She had an on-again, off-again boyfriend named Ian, and her family said that she seemed happy and settled. Eventually, she would leave her position at the Toronto Children's Hospital, and she would take on a role at South Lake Regional Health Center in Newmarket. Here she would be working with a variety of patients and doctors throughout the hospital, so a more diverse role than working in the cancer unit and burn ward. In 2010, she resigned from her position at South Lake and accepted a new position with a pharmaceutical company that she is said to have been very excited about. Now, on August 30th, when Sonia didn't show up to work, her work contacted the police as this was very out of character for Sonia. The police let her family know that she was missing, and they tried to reach out and get in touch with her, of course. Later on that day, they would get a tip about an abandoned vehicle, and upon further inspection, they would find her white Toyota Corolla with the trunk and driver's front door open. They would find it behind an Orangeville town hall in a wooded area in Orangeville, Ontario. And this location is less than a mile from her house. They note that there were no signs of forced entry into the vehicle, and there was blood found inside the vehicle as well as on the bumper near the trunk. They, of course, identify that the owner of the vehicle is Sonia, and they go to her home address to try and see if she's there and find out what's going on. At her house, they find a bloody scene outside the front door. You see spatters of blood in her front steps area, as well as a partial bloody footprint. Now, they find no signs of forced entry into the home itself. However, there's blood inside the house, and it appears that an altercation had taken place in her bedroom. They note that her bedding is missing, so her sheets and comforter are not on the bed. So at this point in time, her parents officially file a missing persons report as the police suspect foul play, and they begin searching the surrounding areas for Sonia or any trace of her. They bring in helicopters and canine units to help with their search. Of course, friends and family were all interviewed. Her digital footprint was analyzed, all her online activity was analyzed, and they put out pleas to the public asking for assistance with any information anyone might have with regards to her whereabouts. Now, although her neighbors were home at the time or the night that she went missing, they say even that they were home with the windows open. Her one neighbor said that, and they didn't hear anything. They didn't hear an altercation. They didn't hear a struggle. They didn't hear an argument of any kind. They heard nothing, and they saw nothing, unfortunately. Now, when they talked to Sonia's mom, Michelle, they come to find out that she had seen her last the day before she went missing, so on the Sunday night. She says that Sonia had come over for lunch at their family home in Bolton. Her dad had washed her Toyota for her while her mom and her sat inside and had some lunch and had a visit. She says that Sonia was happy that day and seemed content. Nothing was out of the ordinary. Later on that evening, Sonia would call her mom and leave a voicemail asking about baking a cake for a friend of theirs that they had coming in from out of town. This would be the last time that her recover blood-stained bedding that was determined to be the bedding from Sonia's bed that they had been looking for. They believed that she was wrapped in the bedding, dragged outside, and put in the vehicle to be taken away. Orangeville Police Detective Mark Pritchard released a statement saying, "It's quite apparent from our scene examination that when the culprit left the scene, he was covered in a significant amount of blood. The blood would be expected to be on both footwear and clothing." He continues, "It certainly appears that the culprit left the house in Sonia's car and then returned to downtown Orangeville with her car." Adding that police believe the person they are looking for is familiar with the Orangeville area. Police say that they are likely looking for one individual who acted alone and is someone who knows or is familiar with Sonia, but she also may not necessarily know this person. They are able to identify the bloody shoe print as being left by a size 10 or 11 men's Dakota or Wind River brand shoes, and they determined that these shoes would have been purchased at a Mark's work warehouse. They do a plea for DNA, voluntary DNA, and they get about 600 young men, all over the age of 18, who volunteered or voluntarily submitted their DNA. Now, the police would say that they had DNA of the killers from the crime scene. However, there's no information online about what that DNA is. I would assume that it would be blood, but they're not releasing that information. They also have not released the murder weapon or the manner in which she was murdered, although there is speculation online that she was bludgeoned and that her face was unrecognizable, sadly, when they did recover her body. But there are details about the case that the police are not releasing to the public because it's an ongoing investigation. So the DNA that they have from the killer, I don't know specifically what that DNA is. I just know that they have it. And when they did this DNA sweep and asking for the public's help, that they were trying to match that DNA that they found at the crime scene. So they get the DNA of over 600 men who all voluntarily provided their DNA, and unfortunately they came up with no matches, which I just want to comment on that. If somebody is voluntarily giving you their DNA to help with a murder investigation, obviously if you've murdered Sonia, you're not going to voluntarily give your DNA. So that whole process seems pretty stupid, unless I'm missing a key detail of that makes it not so stupid. But I don't understand what their thinking is with that, unless they just thought, hey, we'll get this DNA and maybe it'll match up to another crime or something. But again, if you know that you've committed crimes and that your DNA is not in the system, why would you voluntarily give it to the police? So I don't see how that would have been helpful, but anyways. So in their ongoing investigation, they speak to Sonia's mother, and she tells them that Sonia had been stressed out in the months leading up to her death. She describes an incident that Sonia had at work with a supervisor. I guess Sonia had changed a dosage that had been prescribed to a patient, and she did not get her supervisor's authorization like she was supposed to, and this caused issues. It created tension, and she says that Sonia would come home crying at night and felt like she was being treated like a criminal because of what happened. So as we know, about a month before her disappearance, she happening at work. She left for that reason, it seems. Michelle, her mom, also speaks of conflict with the Workers' Safety and Insurance Board at this previous job, though. So I guess she had had a shoulder injury that happened at work, and the Workers' Safety and Insurance Board was trying to get out of having to pay her disability that she was owed. So there was back and forth that was happening with that since she left the company. Her mom says on the day of Sonia's disappearance, within hours of when Sonia would have been murdered, there was a meeting with the board to make a decision about whether or not she would get paid for her disability pay. So she's saying it's within hours of when Sonia would have been murdered, so I assume that would have been for like Monday morning kind of thing, because she went missing on Sunday night. So this meeting would have been planned for Monday. So when reporters reached out to the hospital to ask about this, a representative named Tammy LaRue said she wasn't aware of any disputes between Sonia and any member of the hospital staff, and that she would have to consult with Human Resources to verify any claims otherwise. LaRue did say that Sonia was not under any disciplinary action and that she left her job on her own terms. It does look like they paid out this claim, and a check was couriered, it looks like, within a couple days of her disappearance. So they very quickly jumped on getting that paid out to her when they had the spotlight on them, which is interesting. Michelle would also tell investigators that her daughter had had some conflict with some younger gentlemen that lived in the same townhouse complex as hers. I guess these neighbors were quite noisy and disrupted Sonia quite a bit. As she worked shift work, she would need to sleep at odd times, and I guess she had to call the police more than once on these young men. With that being said, these guys had moved out prior to her disappearance, and police come out with nothing when they look into these guys, so there's no evidence to support them having any involvement. Police would also come to learn that Sonia had been active on online dating sites such as Plenty of Fish, where she had interacted with a number of different men before meeting her boyfriend. However, in looking at her online footprint and through her messages, they didn't find any evidence or anything linking anyone she met there with her disappearance or murder. Now, as the weeks and months passed, police continued to investigate, but there didn't seem to be much movement in the case. They interviewed people, or continued to interview people close to Sonia, including her boyfriend Ian, as well as a married man Sonia had been seeing off and on for the past year. Now, it says online that this man was cleared as a suspect and that all their leads seemed to fizzle out. But a married man Sonia had been seeing off and on over the past year, I mean, that raises red flags for sure. But so criminal profilers end up coming in and they meet with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. They spend several days reviewing the case and they come up with a profile on their killer. So they suspect that he's a younger male. They suggest that the killer may have displayed out of the ordinary or unusual behavior to family, friends, and relatives in the days following Varashin's death. They said the killer may have increased use of drugs or alcohol prior to the killing. They said that the killer most likely would have missed routine activities like work or school said they have not released the manner in which she died or the murder weapon. They have not even released that information to Sonia's family, as they want to keep that information private as the investigation is still open. So initially there was a reward of $2,000 for any information leading to a conviction in Sonia's case. As of this year, that reward amount is $50,000. Detective Sean Glassford, who's the Orangeville Provincial Police lead investigator on this case, says of the ongoing investigation. He says that investigators have examined DNA phenotyping, which aims to predict a person's physical appearance or ancestry for forensic purposes. He says, "I don't want to say too much about that. It's been considered, but we're not ignoring it. I wouldn't say we're done with it." Then there is familial DNA searching, which is designed to confirm or refute whether a person leaving DNA at a crime scene is a father, son, or full sibling of somebody already in the DNA database. That's super interesting technology. Although that specific process is against the law in Canada. I wonder why. Glassford said nothing prevents investigators from collecting DNA from a deceased suspect's family member to come up with a good enough profile where scientists could eliminate that person as a suspect. He says, "We communicate with the Center of Forensic Sciences regularly. Everything we can, whatever new sciences come up, we're looking at it. We're conversing with them. We're trying to figure out if this is something we are able to do." He also continues to make pleas to the public for further assistance. He says, "There's going to be someone who knows something. They gotta live with themselves. That gets harder to do over time," he said. "Circumstances change for people. Maybe that relationship broke up. Maybe they know something. Call us." And then anyone with information about the Sonia Varaschin murder case is asked to contact Orangeville Police at 519-941-2522. There's also a couple other numbers they give there for OPP and Crime Stoppers. Okay, so now let's discuss potentially what happened to her. The first theory, and the one I think is most likely the case, is that someone she met on an online dating site either got jealous of her off and on relationship or angry that maybe she turned down their advances and killed her. Now, the reason I think this is the most likely is because at her home you don't see any signs of forced entry. Nobody heard any commotion or anything, which makes you think that somebody came to her door and she let them in willingly, that she knew this person. So it would line up that it could have been someone she went on a date with or had met at least once before and was comfortable enough where she let them into her home, or at least wasn't startled enough to yell if they tried to push in her home. When I mentioned an on-again, off-again boyfriend that was married, that instantly put all my red flags up. I feel like they obviously would have looked into this person, and I assume into this person's wife, but that's a hell of a lot of motive to want someone gone. I would think either the wife maybe potentially found out and was coming after Sonia for that reason, or maybe the husband came after Sonia because Sonia was going to tell or come clean about the affair, or be a random attack. But another theory is that somebody from her work, relating to the work disputes she has, was involved and killed her. This theory I don't think has any merit. I feel like her boss is not going to come after her and kill her because they have a little altercation, especially since Sonia left. She no longer works there, so I don't see what motive an old boss would have to take her life. And if it's in relation to the insurance board or worker safety board, that's insurance money. It's not like one person on the worker safety board has to foot that claim amount. I mean, that's all through insurance. What motive do they have to get rid of her? It can't be that much money that they're talking about paying her out. I mean, let's say she was off for a few months. It's a few $1,000s, like maybe 10 grand. So to murder somebody over an insurance payout, I just think that seems very unlikely. Another possibility would be that this was a random attack, that somebody saw an opportunity. Maybe she was out front in her garden or something, and this person thought, hey, that's a vulnerable person, or that's someone that I can kill easily. I don't know. Seems unlikely, but crazier things have happened. But typically, I find there's usually motive. It's rare that I've seen in true crime cases where it's just a completely random person. It's usually always someone that you know or has some sort of affiliation to you or knows you in some way. And when I look at all the information, as I said, the person who would have the most motive to me would be either an ex of hers or the spouse of an ex of hers. You would think police would have looked into this person and his wife and made sure that they both have alibis, but people can lie. Maybe they lied and said they were together that night and they were both in on it. Like, who knows? Without all the information, we will never know. But I feel like that's the most likely thing that happened. But let me know what your theories are and what you think. So I'm going to end with some words, kind words about Sonia, as I like to do. So her friend Rick Foulston said he considered her family. He says Sonia was always generous with her time during any health issue with her family and friends, adding that she had in fact taken special care of him once when his health had suffered, working around her schedule and even taking some personal days off to help him. Her vibrant personality, her consideration for others will be remembered by all who knew her. An ex-co-worker of hers, Martha Williams, says of her time working with Sonia, she supported children with challenges and was always a point of joy at the camp. Sonia loved to laugh, and she did so even when the joke was on her. But Sonia was also a fierce activist for her patients in every job she held and beyond. She was very protective of those around her, even when not in her role as a nurse. Sonia was memorable to everyone she met. For such a petite person, she had a huge presence, and that will live in all of us. Thank you, Michelle and Atilio, for raising such a wonderful daughter. On her obituary, it says Sonia was passionate about her work and devoted to the well-being of all the children she cared for. She was described as being vibrant, a loving woman who enjoyed cooking, skiing, and being outdoors. Her Aunt Sophie says, when I think of Sonia, I can see her big, beautiful smile and I can hear her laugh. That's the Sonia I want to remember. That's the Sonia we love. Her mother says she keeps her daughter mother's ashes beside a photo of her in their living room so that she's always with her. Michelle says, my biggest hope is that they catch the killer before I die. Okay, that's the case of Sonia. I hope